discussion, slow fashion versus fast fashion. The final discussion in DesignMT's series of 4. My name is Peggy Apat-Brown. I'm Academic Director with the Chamber of Fashion, Malta Foundation. It's a non-profit voluntary organisation. We support fashion. I'd like to thank tonight's panel for participating in this discussion and to ask them to introduce themselves and to explain how they're involved in fashion. So, Charlene, can I kick off with you?
So, hello everyone. I'm Charlene, and I come from the brand Churpina. And for the last 7 years, I've been exploring making swimwear here in Malta. I make the items myself, so it allows me to be slower, because since we're talking about slow fashion, this gives me a lot of wiggle area where I can take things as slow as I want to. And that's just that for me.
Marco?
I'm Marco Parascandalo, Creative Director and owner of brand Parascandalo. I've been running this brand for 10 years, and we always focus on being as sustainable as possible, mainly using a lot of denim, recycled denim. We also started using organic cotton for our t-shirts. Our t-shirts are very popular here in Malta. And I'm really passionate about being as sustainable as possible. That's it.
Keith?
Hi, I'm Caruana, so I am the owner and artisan of Captain Scott. Captain Scott is a local brand, started with mostly artisanal leathercraft, traditional leathercraft goods, and eventually moved into fashion, focusing mostly on leather accessories and bespoke.
Ron?
Hello, I'm Ron. I'm founder and creative director at Charles & Ron. Charles and myself have been in fashion for quite a long time. Our brands, our work started out more as a bespoke thing, what we did in the early days, but then later on we developed the brand into a more commercial side, so where we also operate stores. And yeah, I think that's it.
Rebecca?
Hi, excuse me. I'm Becky. I'm an academic industrial designer and a shoe designer and maker. My passion, besides making shoes and designing shoes, is to preserve the artisanal craft from extinction. So I put a lot of focus into academia, and besides focusing on the design aspect, I also focus on this revival of shoemaking. And that's it for now. Becky's Design, and that's me.
Thank you. So, 92 tonnes of textile waste are dumped globally every year. It's a bit difficult to visualise that. My 8-year-old grandson, Alex, said, "Nanny, an African elephant weighs 10 tonnes, so that's like dumping 9,200 elephants every year." Maybe that's easier to visualise. So, before I put my first question to the panel, 100 billion tonnes of garments are produced each year. I believe most of us understand what fast fashion is. It means that to buy a t-shirt for, say, $5.99, a poorly paid worker in a third world factory working in pretty awful conditions has to work for many hours to turn cheap textiles into something we might wear several times and then chuck, just so she or he can buy enough food to feed themselves that day. The slow fashion movement provides an alternative paradigm to the fast fashion model, since the slow fashion movement connects suppliers and producers and more closely with the consumer. So my question to the panel now, how do you describe the process of slow fashion, and how are Maltese slow fashion designers competing with fast fashion retailers in such a small market as Malta? Who would like to kick off?
We have a project at the moment where we are collaborating with artists, and instead of creating masses of garments, we create mock-ups of these t-shirts that are done on demand. So if there is demand for the item, we produce it. If there isn't demand, we remove after a few months and have something fresh. It keeps our business running. It involves other artists to collaborate with us. And like that, we always have something fresh on the website and in our stores, but they're done on demand. Obviously, we have to explain to the client, to the customer, that there is a waiting time of 10 to 15 days. If they buy it online, they will still have to wait 20 days if they bought it from, I don't know, China or wherever these items are produced. So that is one way we are trying to keep and help educate the customer that if you want to buy something that is good quality, there's a lot of thought put in creating this garment, you have to wait. Another way we do slow fashion is we recycle second-hand denim. So we repurpose either our own scraps, so we produce a collection that we use raw denim, and then we have the scraps rather than tossing them. We produce smaller pieces of fabric where we make patchwork bags, and they are done nicely as if they were done in a factory, but they're made by hand, they're made by locals, and they are sold at a reasonable price as well.
Excellent. Ron?
I think when we're talking fast fashion, obviously everybody knows it's taken over a huge part of the market worldwide, and I think there's we need a very big shift in mentality, like clients, people in general, because I think since a few years back, obviously the conversation started about sustainability, being more sustainable, and clients being more aware about the products they buy, but I feel at the moment we're going completely to the opposite direction, where fast fashion has taken over, where it has become socially acceptable to brag about that you bought a dress for €5 or that you bought a whole box full of clothes which came in for a very low price. So I think the mentality of people is almost shifting to where they don't really care where it came from. They don't really care anymore who made it and what conditions. They don't care what's in the material. As long as it's cheap, then it's fine. So I think this is a reality that we're facing at the moment. Yes, obviously there are people that are aware, that are more conscious about the things they buy, but it is a tiny percentage of the people that are actually shopping. Then as well, I think when the economy obviously slows down a little bit and people have less money to spend, then they go for cheaper clothes. So again, the question is how we're going to get out of this system that is almost created. I see from us, we try and be more sustainable, but I always feel, okay, you can call something, okay, you got a sustainable fabric, but then where did it come from? If it traveled all over the world in a plane, on a train, on a boat, what remains sustainable about that, you know? So yes, you can be more, for me it's always more sustainable. Okay, if you go for this option, you're being more sustainable, but fully sustainable you're never. I think then we need to go back to an older model where you have a sheep next to your house, you take the wool, you knit the sweater, and you sell it to your neighbor, and that is sustainability. But for us, when you're in business, I always say you have to close the doors. because we live in a world where it's all about consumerism. Everybody wants to buy, so whatever you do involves things which are unfortunately not very sustainable, and you then have to try and improve. But it's hard when the client out there is not appreciative of what you're doing or doesn't want to pay for it.
So, if you can't control the buying habit, do you think that governments should get more involved in limiting the amount of fast fashion?
I read a bit of an article a while ago where America is limiting the amount of packages that are shipped from the company chain to the US, because they apparently chain found this loophole where if they ship a parcel under 200 euros, it can get into the country tax-free. So they've been shipping all their merchandise under 200 euros, not paying any tax and whatnot. So they are being able to keep the prices very low while still doing all that business with the US. So from what I read at least, the US are starting to try to tackle that the minimis issue with China, so that they will eliminate whatever is coming into China that has to be taxable, so that it can be controlled. And is that what I read from their end. And to back up with what Ron said, for example, for my swimsuit, I use regenerated fabric, it's called. And they take plastic waste, melt it down, and create pellets out of it. They melt the pellets and create thread, and it's woven into new fabric. The problem with it is, what happens once I buy the fabric, I make a swimsuit, and I sell it. It has a lifetime, of course. And I contacted the company that I buy the fabric from and told them, can I give the post-consumer waste back to you? And they told me no, because the fabric is mixed up with so many different kinds of chemicals that it's impossible to separate. So it got me back at a dead end again. So it's not a recycled thing, it's just recycled once thing. And it didn't solve my concern for less waste. It's not circular.
Okay.
So I'm still looking for something to do.
You talk about America, what is America's doing. Now this year, France's lower house of parliament approved a bill seeking penalties on ultra-fast fashion producers, so by companies like China's Shein, aimed at helping to offset their environmental impact. So there is a government that's actually not able to control the consumer buyer, but they can somehow get to the source.
Involved.
Yeah.
And I think if the governments are not going to get involved in all this, the consumers there, they have the item available and they can buy it. It's up to them what they buy. Of course, they can get a bit conscious and all that, but if it's available, who am I to stop them from buying it? So I don't think there's much else, me as a person and as a designer, that I can do more to limit all this consumption. It has to go higher up, I guess.
I'd like to go back to what Ron was saying when it comes to the consumer. It has become normalized to own a lot of things. For example, I met with some of you on Monday, and even though I was happy with the outfit on Monday, I would not be content to wear it again today. It has become, we've all become princesses that we expect that every single event we're going to attend, we're going to have a new outfit. And it has become like a social status that regardless that we're making it from, paycheck to paycheck, it's okay to, go broke just as long as that we look Instagrammable, if I have to use that word. And I did that today. I sort of made sure I picked up the right stuff, or I tried at least. But everyone's doing this on a day-to-day basis, so I think that if we had to rethink, again, how we see consumption, and if I go back to 25 years ago, when I was in my teens, and I was thinking, we used to buy seasonal things. You'd buy that 2 outfits to go out, you buy the stuff to go on the picnic. Now it is, I'm going out tomorrow and buying something. I'm going out in 2 days, I'm buying something. I have 6 weddings, I'm buying 6 outfits. And it's become the norm. I'm happy to say though that I spend a lot of time with the Gen Z people, and they are bringing it back. But what they're doing better about this awareness is that we used to thrift. When I say we, millennials and older, we used to thrift because, or wear second-hand clothes, whatever, because it was a necessity. Now it's cool. Now it's becoming cool again to go to a second-hand shop and buy second-hand clothes, and that's good. And that's where I think I'm going to put the responsibility on influencers and people who are pushing these trends to not push overconsumption, but push the value of fashion, where we now see fashion not anymore as a throwaway, like a disposable cup of Starbucks, but actually where we're seeing fashion as art. You don't own 600 paintings in a room. You own 1, 2 paintings in a room. You know, it's all right. It depends. Not everyone. But what I'm trying to say is we have to look at things differently. And I'm glad to say that, as I said, I actually am very pleased in the fashion design department that I see at MCAS and all the students there. I'm very happy to see them, you know, dressing up in an old coat that's being picked up from us. That's good, and we must hone that a lot. And then I encourage, like what Marco said before about this, I also, from necessity, do the same thing. I will only do 24 shoes in 1 year. My idea not only came from sustainability, but also from the way of life. You know, we don't become slaves of our work so we become rich. We have to choose. The fashion designer comes from a life. You have to sustain a family, whatever. So that idea also came from the value. If you are lucky enough to have one of my 24 shoes in that year, therefore the value is higher. If I can, you know, pull them out of my workshop very quickly. There's not much value to it, right? An artist doesn't make art so quickly, right? So I'm going to put it back on how we see things. Millennials and older, we've done things a little bit. We were born when eBay popped up, and we fell in love with eBay, and then we went to Shane. I was victim to Shane as well. I'm not gonna deny it. When it came out, I was a victim, and then the adrenaline picks up that you're always enjoying the packages coming in. It becomes like this dopamine fix. But then your consciousness hits in and you say, no, this has to stop. Like, literally, the problems I'm creating. But we have to now look down at the young ones and say, listen, it's up to you. We've messed it up enough as it is, and re-educate and instill some old 80s and pre-80s thoughts that were good, but we did it out of necessity. Now it's out of sense.
So what you're saying is buy less, buy better, keep your clothes longer, and have a lasting love affair with what you choose. If that's the case, collectively, as a community, how can you send this message to the public?
Well, I think personally, I think education, I really enjoyed listening to, because education and spirituality is key, because that is automatically linked to art. And how do we educate? And that's where it's coming from, really, because education has a big role here. And I can see it's, unfortunately, did not do so well so far because of this dopamine fix. And it starts from choosing, I don't know, covers for your copybooks. So if you're using cheap plastic and the teacher asks you to use 6 different colors of plastics, and that was cool in my age, and that's the source of the problem, because it's once, at least as a leather crafter, and there's a lot of criticism about leather, we can go into but the moment the person is disconnected from the land, that is where the problem starts. Because as she was saying, you know, if we had a sheep and we could use the wool, that connection is totally gone. I mean, our children today are eating chicken, but they're eating chicken nuggets, but they don't know what's coming from chicken. So this disconnection is, I would say, by design, but that's a different story. However, in my case, thrifting is working really in favor of people who create pieces of art. We have limited hands. I punch every single hole by hand, and I stitch every single stitch. And that connection is coming again, because this bag has been 50 years alive. My grandfather gave me this bag, and could you fix it, or could you? And you spoke about France, and France actually did a very, very, very good initiative. I don't believe in limiting or being against the free market. I know when you look at numbers and you want to create a brand like Charlene Joan, for example, is an amazing brand, and then automatically start looking at numbers, because you have I also started employing people myself, so you start seeing numbers. It's really, really scary, to be honest. However, very scary. However, in real fact, am I really is a Chinese belt really a competitor to mine? Probably they have to break around 20 to compete. And I'm not saying that to frown upon, same things with the shoes. You know, people are really realizing, after breaking 12 belts, and I could go to a place where I could choose the buckle, choose the stitching, do it all. Wow, and I do feel like royalty in a different way, though. And this
bespoke,
is
something bespoke.
exactly. And the French government, just wanted to put this point in, and I will leave my colleagues to speak. But the French government actually did, those who are doing repairs on leather or heavy materials get a huge discount from the tax benefit. It was also, if you buy sewing machines, you get a discount. Anyway, so there's a lot of really good, proactive, and it's a question of culture as well. And by doing workshops, it's a very good way. And also by schools showing the process of. So let's say they go to Italy, why not go to a tannery to actually see the whole process and see the difference of chromium and all the kind of negative or not so environmentally friendly practice. Because now we have to do that education, and it costs a lot of money and time, and that's where we would like to have help. Because it's not necessarily competition, it's a different thing. But we would need some help in the education as well.
I'd like to call on someone in the audience. The Waste Framework Directive member states are required to set up separate collection of waste textiles by January the 1st, 2025. For this to happen, Malta will be involved in separate collecting, sorting, reuse and recycling of our textiles. First of all, I'd like to ask Donna in the audience, who will be able to explain more about the legislation.
The legislation is going to be in effect from January 25, but so far it doesn't seem that there has been a lot of progress in it, and I am just saying the observations. And I don't know if you can contribute some, like, with the easy collection of waste the way it is right now. I don't think it can be enforced, or if people are willing to be separating the waste properly, even as it is right now, let alone when there is the textiles separation. I don't know if you want to add something. All the waste, to be honest, but yes, garment waste is on top of this waste. I mean, even at the waste separation as it is right now, not everybody hasn't, I don't think that it has really penetrated deep in the culture properly for people to always separate your garment. It's not easy. Sometimes you have the black bag open if you just dump everything in it. So that's along the waste. And this is putting it on the consumer. And how can the waste industry, be it in Malta, be incentivized to actually be separating textile waste, which is another layer.
Becky, I noticed, I was really surprised. I noticed that in the one of the black bags, along with waste takeaway food boxes, they list shoes. You can throw your shoes away.
Yeah, shoes are one of those things that are really not recyclable, because you've got metal, cork, rubber, felts, loads of things. What I actually do, and at a point I was planning for my husband to do to me further, is collect everyone's old shoes and pull them apart. And I used to create a collection of parts, because the heel is reusable, the shank is reusable, I get the cork and I grind it back down. The leather parts are like if there's a big boot. But yes, I'm glad that, and maybe we can actually one day talk about this further. I had some other designers who were interested in setting up a system where things come in and they get disassembled and used, because buckles and heels cost, to buy them from abroad, €3 a pair. These shoes have a 3D printed heel. But to buy a new pair of shoes, they're a minimum of €3 a pair. A shank, the metal part in our shoes, €1 per shank. So that's a lot of money. And those are very usable. A leather, once you pull out of the thing, if it's a good plastic, you can just use it on something else. I use it a lot. But there has to be, like we've invented other, like, where we go and bring in sites. We need the sites where we can disassemble fashion. Keith?
Well, with regards to leather, obviously it's high. Like, the problem is also there's no education. So I get a lot of people coming to the shop and they say, oh, that's leather. So even identifying, I would say, real leather and other materials, there's a lot of other beautiful materials, including wood and stuff like that, should be part of the educational syllabus. Because I think they're too busy studying other things. And identifying things like that would really, really help out. And also using such materials for other things in their own house without even needing any, design element. So with regards to buckles, I cannot agree more. I spend probably as much on brass as much as I spend on leather. And it's so difficult. Europe is facing war soon, already actually. And in those kind of situations, people really realize what they've been throwing away. And then it's a bit usually too late. And with regards to politicians, I think deciding on certain elements, that's really, really crucial, that also they get the basic education when it comes to policies. Sometimes some things don't make sense, they really do not. So there would be, for example, environmental policies in favor of certain materials, and then, to import, or actually, for example, I can tell you from here, I don't know if this is news, but all the cows that die here, the skin used to be taken to Italy for tannery, and today it doesn't make any financial economical sense. So it's thrown away. And if you want something more to shock you, the cow, the most traditional, beautiful Maltese bull, which is nearly extinct from the world, there's only around 12 specimens left. And it's one of the things that really drew me to leathercraft, is this beautiful dark red skin. And it's thrown away. So this is a national heritage. There's only 12 left in the entire world, and there's no plan what to do with the skin. I'm actually in talks at the moment to try and create some national heritage artifacts using it. But we don't have a tannery, that's fine, but at least help youngsters, whoever, the country needs a tannery. Okay? And those who are working on giving some part of that to a national infrastructure. And then obviously I'm talking only about that, that's my thing, but I'm sure there's other things that can be done using waste, but obviously in space, and you need to say, listen guys, there's these benefits if you do that, because the country needs it. Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned education. I'd like to call on an MCAR student in the audience. Diego. How are you, Diego? Oh, can you stand up? Thank you. So Diego, introduce yourself.
So, hello everyone, my name is Diego Mirabile. I'm 18 years old and a first year bachelor's in fashion design student at AMCAS ICA.
Okay, Diego, do you feel that you are well informed about the importance of adopting sustainable practices? And have you been able to incorporate anything into your own designs that you consider helps rather than harms the environment?
I feel that I'm very fortunate nowadays that I live in a world where I can research about sustainability, and also I feel that I'm very lucky that at school our lecturers emphasize the importance of using sustainable fashion practices and techniques. And when it comes to my own designs, As Becky said, I'm part of the Gen Z generation and upcycling fabrics, so ravaging through old garments and tearing them apart and creating something new out of them, creating art, which is something else that was mentioned that I truly believe that fashion is and what I try to create and my small percentage. And also something that I learned is trying to utilize a zero waste pattern technique, so placing the patterns in ways where I try to minimize the waste of fabric. So that is the way I contribute a small percentage to sustainability. Thank you so much.
Becky,
Sorry.
to top up on what he said, the idea of placing patterns on fabric so that you reduce waste is very important. I do it a lot as well in swimwear. For example, there are pieces. Swimwear is almost lingerie, so it contours around the body. And sometimes there are pattern pieces that allow you to waste so much because of its shape. That you throw away, for example, in 1 meter of fabric, if you place the pieces incorrectly, you throw away half of it. So I tend to recut and redesign patterns so as when I place the pieces on fabric, I can put them so much closer together, like a jigsaw puzzle, so that waste is minimized so much more. And it's a very nice thing to do with swimwear. With clothing, there are many more techniques you can use to minimize waste, like creating